What's the best camera to get if you want to make travel videos? This is a question I get asked all the time. I work full-time as a travel creator here on YouTube and on Instagram and TikTok, and I actually travel with 5 different cameras. In this video, I'll explain how each type of camera is useful and the pros and cons of each one. I'll also tell you about a useful free resource that I've just launched for travel creators or those who are aspiring to become travel creators. So keep watching. Hey, welcome back to Top Life Family. My name is Carmen Sognonvi. In this video, I'm going to share with you what's in my camera bag. Now, before we get started, I should let you know that I am not a professional photographer or a professional videographer. I'm not super knowledgeable about technical specs or the intricacies of shutter speed and exposure and all that kind of stuff. I'm just a regular Joe or regular Jill who stumbled into becoming a travel creator. Because of that, I only work with cameras that are really easy for the average person to just pick up and start using. So if you're looking for a really technical review of all of the latest like DSLR or mirrorless cameras with new lenses, this is not going to be the video for you. But if you'd like to find out which cameras are really small, portable, easy to use, easy to take with you on a trip, then you will find this video really useful. I'm going to link to every single one of these cameras below, so you can always click over and learn more about each one. All right, so let's jump right in. Number 1, iPhone 12 Pro Max. If you've ever wondered what's the main camera we use to shoot our travel vlogs, this is it. Believe it or not, 90% of the travel footage that you see in our YouTube videos is all shot on iPhone. So personally, I always upgrade to the latest iPhone each year, so currently I am shooting on an iPhone 12 Pro Max. But really, any iPhone or Samsung Galaxy from the last 3 years is gonna get you great results. When people ask me what kind of camera they should get if they're an aspiring travel vlogger, I always tell them to get an iPhone, especially if they're not already a really proficient photographer or videographer. And here's why. It's always in focus. The reason the iPhone is such a great choice if you're not really skilled already with a camera is that you don't have to worry about using autofocus or manually focusing the camera to make sure that things are not blurry. It does it automatically, and pretty much whatever you point it at, with some exceptions, is going to be in focus. But I actually watch a lot of travel vlogs on YouTube, and one of the things that is so annoying to me is that there are so many vlogs where the camera is just always a little bit out of focus, or someone's face is always a little bit blurry. And every time I see a video like that, I'm like, dude, if you had just shot this on an iPhone, like, you wouldn't have to worry about it. Obviously, nothing gives that beautiful soft look like a DSLR or a mirrorless camera, but if you don't actually know how to use that thing properly, the video you shoot is gonna look terrible. So for the average person, an iPhone is gonna be the better choice. Whatever you shoot is gonna be in focus, and you don't have to really do much to it to make the footage look good. It's unobtrusive. One thing that I really love about shooting on the iPhone is that it doesn't freak anybody out. Like, if you walk into a restaurant or a hotel with this big, like, mirrorless camera on a big Joby bendy tripods, and you know, you've got the big fluffy mic on the top, everybody knows that you're a YouTuber and people are gonna freeze up. And sometimes you can also run into issues where someone is not gonna allow you to film because it looks like you're doing some kind of professional production. Whereas if you're shooting on an iPhone, especially if you're not even like hooking it up to any kind of like grip or stabilizer, if you're just holding an iPhone in your hand like this, you just look like an average person who's, you know, maybe shooting something for their Facebook page or their Instagram. So I find that as a travel creator, it just allows me to blend in much more easily and kind of puts everybody at ease. It's easy to use. So I've already talked about the fact that pretty much whatever you shoot on an iPhone is automatically going to be in focus, so that's one way in which it's easy to use. But if you want to get just one step more complex, it's still easy to use. So for example, I shoot a lot of B-roll shots where there's something in the foreground. And so let's say there's like a tree here, but I'm mainly shooting the pool, and I'm kind of moving, this is the phone, I'm kind of moving it across this way so that the pool is sort of revealed behind the tree. Now, if you just shoot that regularly on an iPhone, what's going to happen is it'll first focus on the tree, and then it'll focus on the pool, and that's what I don't want. I want the focus to be on the pool the whole time. Now with a regular camera, this is going to be a little bit more complicated to achieve, but with an iPhone, all I have to do is first tap and hold onto the pool area, and that is going to lock in the focus and the exposure. So then that way, when I begin my shot here behind the tree is going to be out of focus, and as I move it over, the pool is in focus. So the pool is going to be in focus the whole time. So it's just little things like that that make it so easy to use. So you're able to get these shots that look fairly cinematic or professional without really having to do like that much work or have that much knowledge about cameras. The wide angle lens is amazing. One of my favorite things about the iPhone is using the 0.5 wide angle lens. Now you only really want to use this when it's really bright because in low light conditions, everything can end up looking kind of grainy. But this wide angle lens just gives a really cool look. You know, it's very expansive, and oftentimes as you're kind of panning this way, it just has kind of a cool look because things on the outer parts are slightly stretched. And so especially if you're filming like landscapes or even filming inside of a hotel room or a restaurant or something like that, it can give kind of this epic feeling. The audio is pretty good. So when it comes to audio, obviously it's always going to be best to record that separately with some kind of a wireless mic. The audio that comes out of the iPhone is already pretty decent. So for a lot of my vloggy kind of shots like this, I don't even record the audio separately because the way it comes out is already good enough for my vlog. The iPhone upgrade program is awesome. So I'm always surprised by how many people don't actually know about this program, but you don't have to pay for an iPhone in one lump sum up front, and you don't have to tie it to your carrier either. So Apple offers this program where you can actually break your payments over 2 years, and you pay a little bit every month. So you're basically financing your phone. But the cool thing is that at the end of the first 12 months or at the end of the first year, you can trade in your phone for a new phone. And if necessary, they'll just adjust those payments a little bit. So as an example, the iPhone 12 Pro Max, which is what I'm currently shooting on, that breaks down to about $45 per month if you use the iPhone upgrade program. And the great thing is that after 1 year, if you want to upgrade to the next phone, which presumably will be the iPhone 13 Pro Max, you can just trade in your 12 and they'll give you a 13, and your monthly payments will probably continue to be about the same, or maybe they might adjust it a little bit. So if you've been on the fence about getting a new iPhone because it seemed like it was too expensive, this is a plan that actually puts this within reach for a lot of people. Okay, so what are the cons of shooting with an iPhone? You have to use AirDrop to transfer files. I would say this is definitely the biggest con, which is that there's no SD card in an iPhone. Like in a regular camera, you have like a memory card, which you can take out and then you can, attach to your computer or your laptop. And then you can easily just kind of copy and paste files or drag them over into the folder onto your hard drive or onto your computer. On an iPhone, there isn't really this option. And I know that there is a way to kind of like import the photos through the Photos app on your Mac. I've tried this, it always seems kind of buggy. So in my experience, it seems like the best way, and if not the only way, to get your photos and your videos from your phone to your computer or your hard drive is by actually airdropping them. So when AirDrop works, it works really well, but it can be really buggy. So there's a lot of times when it doesn't really work that well. And that means that it's really hard to get your files from your iPhone to your computer. No SD card. So this is kind of related to the previous point. Because there's no SD card, of course, you have to actually use AirDrop to transfer your files. But the other issue is that if you run out of storage on your iPhone, that's it. You're kind of stuck. You don't have a way of just taking out one SD card and putting in a blank one so that you have more space again to shoot on. So running out of space on your iPhone is definitely an issue you have to contend with if you're shooting primarily on your iPhone. So what I have actually ended up doing is I actually have a second phone that is just for shooting content. So my actual phone is a completely separate phone. So the phone that I use for phone calls and checking emails and all of that stuff, I have a separate phone for that. But I have one phone that is completely dedicated just for shooting content. Now at the end of each day, I will AirDrop all of those videos and those photos onto my computer, and then I'll just delete everything on the phone so that I have a blank slate to start with the next day. And for me, this workflow has just worked really well because I don't want to necessarily delete all of the old stuff that's on my phone. So it's much easier for me to kind of shoot everything on the new phone, transfer everything over and then wipe it clean. No batteries. So one downside to shooting with an iPhone is that you have to charge the device itself. There's no sort of removable battery that you can take out when it's low and then put in a fresh battery to keep using and keep shooting on that iPhone. Now the good thing is that these newer phones actually have pretty good battery life in my experience. So it takes a long time to run low on batteries, and I make it a habit to kind of recharge it throughout the day. So it is a con, but it's not the worst. No depth of field. This is definitely one of the big downsides to shooting with an iPhone. If you shoot on a quote-unquote real camera, you have a lot more depth of field, meaning like the things that are in focus, and then the things in the background are a little bit blurry. That's not really an effect that you can achieve on an iPhone, at least when it comes to video. In terms of photos, they of course have portrait mode where you can kind of like fake that effect. So when you do shoot video on iPhone, everything looks fairly flat. So that is one small downside of shooting on an iPhone. By the way, if you're new to this channel, we're the Sognonvi family. There's me, Carmen, my husband Serge, and our daughters Sean and Ella. We work full-time as travel creators, and we're all about inspiring families to explore the world together in comfort and style. We share tips on how you can save time, reduce hassle, and maximize comfort when you travel with kids. If that sounds good to you, please subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss our next video. Our family has set a goal of visiting 21 resorts in 2021. Why resorts? Well, we actually have a whole video that explains that, which I'll link below. I'll also link to our 21 resorts in 2021 playlist so you can check out all the other properties we'll be visiting. Number 2, Sony ZV-1. So I also own a Sony ZV-1, which is actually what I'm shooting this video on right now. So I bought it right before our Maldives trip, and I thought that it would really help us level up our quality, but as it turns out, that isn't exactly what happened. So it's still a useful camera, but I'm using it in ways that I didn't really intend to at first. On trips, I actually end up using it more for still shots than for video. I find that it's a pretty good camera for shooting food, for instance. And in terms of video, I mostly use it for talking head videos like this when it's sitting on a tripod. So let's talk about the pros and cons of the Sony ZV-1. Depth of field. One thing that's great about the Sony is that you are able to achieve that look of having something in the foreground be in focus and then something in the background be a little bit blurred out. So it's nice to be able to get a little bit of that depth of field when you're shooting, even though it is a compact and a pretty easy to use camera. Flip out screen. One thing that is really useful about this camera is that it has a screen that flips out completely, so that makes it really good for vlogging because you're able to make sure that there's nothing distracting in the background, make sure that your whole face is actually in the frame. So that's definitely useful when it comes to vlogging. Multi-interface shoe. So this camera comes in with a built-in shoe, which allows you to mount different accessories on top of it. So while it does come with a built-in mic, for example, if you wanted to actually plug in an external mic, there's a place to mount that mic. Or you can also use it for other things, like you can mount a light onto it. Let's say if you're shooting in the dark and you need light shining on you as the subject, that's something that you can mount on as well. So it's really useful to have that, and especially compared to the iPhone, that's not really an option unless you get some kind of case that has that built in. But Sony, the ZV-1 has that built in already, so it's really easy to add on accessories. Pretty soft look. So compared to the iPhone, you definitely get a much softer, prettier look when you shoot with the Sony ZV-1. It's not quite as beautiful as if you were shooting with like a real DSLR or mirrorless camera, but it's definitely a much softer look than the iPhone, which gives kind of a sharp, very crisp look, which I like too, but it just depends on kind of what vibe you're going for. Okay, so what are the cons of this camera? Battery life. Seriously, like for a vlogging camera, you would expect the battery life to be pretty good, but it's so bad. After about 10 minutes of shooting, that battery is gonna be drained and the camera is gonna shut off. So that alone makes this not really a great choice for your primary camera, especially if you're traveling. Because if you were really going to use this one camera to shoot your entire day, you would need an arsenal of probably like 20 pre-charged batteries to bring with you to have enough juice to last throughout the whole day. Crops in. Now, another thing that I find frustrating about shooting on the Sony is that compared to the iPhone, it's much harder to compose your shot. So with an iPhone, once I'm in video mode, I set up my shot. Whatever I see on the monitor is exactly what's gonna shoot. Whereas on the Sony, I'll set it up like this and I'm like, oh, this looks great. Then as soon as I press record, it's going to zoom in like this much. And so I thought I was getting this much in the frame, but really I'm only getting this much. Another con is that stabilization is terrible. And so when I'm doing the kind of just like walking with the camera, something as simple as that, on the iPhone, it's gonna look really smooth. If I do that exact type of walking shot with the Sony, it's gonna be all over the place like this. And so even though our Maldives videos went fairly viral, I think each of them is at about 500K views at this point, every time I watch them, it really bothers me that the parts that I shot with the Sony are so shaky. And I'm totally kicking myself because I feel like if I shot that with the iPhone, those shots would have looked so much better. By the way, if you're a travel content creator or you're aspiring to be a travel creator, I've just launched a really useful and free resource that you should know about. If you'd like to get advice on pitching brands, negotiating deals and pricing projects, content creation tips, including how to take better photos and create better videos, travel industry news and trends, creator economy developments, camera and gear recommendations, and much more, then sign up for Travel Creator Memo. This is a brand new email newsletter I've created that will make it effortless for travel creators like you to keep up with all the news and information you need to work effectively. I'll link the sign up form below. Number 3, GoPro. If you're a travel creator, having a good action camera is a must. Now, GoPro is definitely not the only choice for an action camera, but it's probably one of the most well-known brands out there. I'm currently shooting on a GoPro Hero 8, but the most current model is the GoPro Hero 9, which is the one that I'm gonna link below here. We use our GoPro mostly in situations that involve a lot of motion or in situations that involve water. So if you see footage of us going down a water slide or playing in a pool, chances are we shot that on our GoPro. But action and water footage is not the only reason to use a GoPro. There are many travel vloggers who actually use a GoPro as their primary vlogging camera. Drew Binsky, for example, is a huge travel YouTuber, and you'll find that a lot of his sort of talking to the camera type shots are shot on GoPro. Okay, so what are the pros and cons of using a GoPro? Great stabilization. Obviously, since GoPro is an action camera, stabilization is sort of its area of expertise. And so whether you're shooting yourself running or walking, or you're sticking your GoPro on a car, looking out a plane window, the stabilization is going to be amazing. Waterproof. This is, of course, a big pro of the GoPro, which is that you can take it underwater with you. So whether you're just getting shots down a water slide or in a pool, or you're actually taking your GoPro all the way down to do snorkeling or scuba diving, it's a really great camera to use for those cool underwater shots. Shoots in 4K. One thing I love about the GoPro is that it shoots in 4K. So we shoot and edit all of our YouTube videos in 4K. So one thing that I love about the GoPro is that pretty much everything you shoot in it is 4K. I think the only thing that may not be 4K when you're shooting on a GoPro is a time lapse. My GoPro time lapses always look a little low res. So it may be something that's available on the Hero 9 and just not on the Hero 8, which is what I'm shooting on. Small size. Now, compared in the realm of action cameras, the GoPro isn't really that small, but when you compare the GoPro to just cameras in general, it is a very small and compact camera. Now, as I mentioned, there are travel creators who actually use their GoPro camera as their main shooting camera, whether they're vlogging to it or shooting outward. And so similar to the iPhone, it's also not that obtrusive because of its small size. So it's not something that's really gonna freak people out if they see that you're filming. So that's definitely a pro in terms of shooting with a GoPro. Tons of accessories. I think definitely one of the big pros of shooting with a GoPro is that there is such a wide universe of mounts and accessories that you can get for the GoPro. So no matter what kind of sport you're doing, what kind of activity, or what type of situation that you're actually shooting, you're likely to find a mount or an accessory that's tailored specifically for that situation. The other great thing is that because GoPro has been around for so many years, there are a lot of third-party companies making mounts and accessories for the GoPro too, and sometimes these can be actually a little bit cheaper than buying the sort of official GoPro branded ones. So that's another advantage because you can actually buy a lot of accessories but not necessarily have to pay top dollar for them. GoPro subscription. So GoPro has this program where you pay a monthly fee. You can also choose to pay this in a lump sum annually, and it gives you a number of benefits, and one of the benefits is camera replacement. Now, the way GoPro positions this is that you can trade in your current camera and they will replace it, no questions asked. As I'm gonna explain in a little while, that's not really how it works in real life, but it is great that this program exists at all. Since the GoPro is an action camera, obviously it's gonna be put in situations where damage is very likely compared to, any other type of camera. So the fact that they offer this program is definitely a plus. Okay, so what are the cons of shooting with a GoPro? Big for an action camera. Now, I know that I just said that the small size of the GoPro is a pro of using a GoPro, but in reality, when it comes to comparing the GoPro to other action cameras, it's actually kind of big. So in the realm of the action camera space, the GoPro is not necessarily that small, sprightly camera that is ultra portable. It can get bulky, and that can be a problem in certain types of shooting situations. GoPro subscription. Now, I said earlier that this program is a pro, but in my mind, it can also be a con depending on your point of view. So I actually recently had the opportunity to test out the subscription and see if the brand is real about replacing my camera, because the screen got cracked on my GoPro, and because of that, there was a lot of water coming in, so it wasn't water resistant anymore, and essentially the whole thing just stopped working. So I went to the GoPro website to figure out how I can get a replacement for this since I was enrolled in the GoPro subscription. And what I found is that the way GoPro positions this program, which is we'll replace your camera, no questions asked, is exactly the opposite of how this works in real life if you try to get a replacement. There were so many questions asked. I had to take so many photos of the damaged GoPro. They made me run through so many hoops. And the whole process honestly really felt like they were trying to make it so difficult that you would just give up on trying to get your camera replaced. And another thing, and this is kind of like in the fine print, is that they don't replace your camera for free. There's still a fee that you have to pay. And that fee varies depending on which camera it is. So for my GoPro 8, I believe the fee fee to replace it was about $80, which obviously that's still cheaper than having to buy a brand new camera. But I think that a lot of people who sign up for the subscription are not aware that it actually costs something when you do need to replace it. Also, there is a cap on 2 replacements per year. That's the maximum you're allowed to do. That part is very reasonable, but just putting it out there so that you know exactly how it all works. Now, if you want an action camera that is super unobtrusive, the GO 2 is probably the best choice out there. I believe this is currently the smallest action camera in the world. It's actually about the size of my thumb. And it comes with this case, which also doubles as a remote. And when you close it up, it's about the size of an AirPods case. So because the camera is so tiny, you can get really, really creative with your shots. I highly recommend checking out Insta360's Instagram account because you'll find examples of some really cool ways to use the GO 2. Now, Insta360 is actually having a sale right now. If you purchase a GO 2, you can get some free mount adapters. So I'm gonna link that below in case you wanna check it out. So what are the pros and cons of shooting with a GO 2? Export as vertical or horizontal. So one of the things that's kind of a pain if you're a creator who creates videos for both YouTube and for TikTok or Instagram stories is that you have to shoot everything twice. First you have to shoot it horizontal, then you have to shoot it vertical. Now, one of my favorite things about the GO 2 is that it shoots essentially like kind of, I guess, a square or a circle shape. And then when you go into the editing software, you can choose whether to export it as either vertical or horizontal. So it's great because you essentially shoot once and you can use it both ways. Small and lightweight. The biggest advantage of the GO 2 is that it is so tiny. So it is really, truly ultra portable, and which is really important, especially when you're shooting travel stuff, even less intrusive than an iPhone. And that's particularly useful, especially if you're looking to shoot kind of like a POV of, let's say, you're moving through a crowded street or you're walking through an airport terminal. You want that POV perspective, but you don't necessarily want everybody else around you to realize that you're filming. Now, obviously, don't film where you're not supposed to film, but it's nice to be able to film in a way where you're not sort of setting off alarm bells and causing reactions among the people that, see that you're holding a camera. You're able to capture much more natural shots this way. Waterproof. So the GO 2 is waterproof up to 13 feet or 4 meters. So if you want to take it into the pool, you definitely can. Now, just keep in mind that this camera itself is waterproof. This case is not. So you don't want to submerge this case into the water because then you're going to have to buy a whole new GO 2. Useful mounts. When you buy the GO 2, it comes already with a bunch of really useful mounts. So for example, there's a magnetic disc that you can wear as a pendant under your shirt, and then the GO 2 camera actually just plops right onto the front. There's also a great one that's a hat clip. So if you're wearing a baseball cap, it's really easy to just slide that right on. And one of my favorites is this one, which has a reusable sticky back, and it adheres to most smooth surfaces. And another cool thing is that the back of the GO 2 is magnetic. So you can actually put it onto any type of metal and it'll stay there. And of course, on the Insta360 website, there are tons more mounts and accessories that you can get to go along with these. But it's great that when you buy the camera, it already comes with all of these options. Horizon leveling. So the stabilization on the GO 2 is really amazing. And in addition to the regular stabilization, they have something called horizon leveling. So essentially it will detect where the horizon is, and no matter in what direction you're moving the camera, that shot is gonna stay steady, the horizon is gonna stay exactly where it is. So what are the cons of shooting with the GO 2? No 4K. So I would say this is the biggest con of shooting with the GO 2. The highest resolution is somewhere in between 1080 and 4K. So if the rest of your video you're shooting in 4K and then you're editing in some of this GO 2 footage, the quality is gonna be slightly less crisp. But honestly, it's not even that noticeable, but it's just something to know as a creator. No batteries. So what I mean by that is there's no external battery that you can kind of plop in when your GO 2 is out of juice. The battery is built into the GO 2 itself. So if you're shooting with the GO 2 by itself, this on its own has about a 30-minute battery life. Now, if you add it onto the case, and you shoot like this with the camera in the case, you get about 150 minutes of shooting time. So just understand that the GO 2 is not necessarily going to be the camera that carries you through a full day of shooting. Think of it more as a way to capture sort of little short moments, little short bursts here and there. Number 5, Insta360 ONE X2. So this is the newest camera in my bag and I'm having so much fun with this one. So I only recently became familiar with 360 cameras. In case they're new to you too, I'm gonna explain what they are first. So basically 360 cameras have more or less a spherical lens, which means that they capture everything within a 360-degree field of view. So they capture the front, back, up, down, sides. So with a normal camera, you decide what direction to point the camera at, and that's gonna determine what's in the shot, right? Now with a 360 camera, you shoot first and then point later, meaning that the camera captures everything, and later you go into the editing software and you actually select which angle or which way you're gonna point the camera at. Now, I'm still very much a beginner at using this camera, so I'm still learning the best ways to shoot and edit. But already we've been able to come up with some pretty cool shots, and it's opened up a lot of new possibilities for us as creators. Now, the ONE X2 is also currently on sale, so this is a great time to pick one up if you've been considering getting a 360 camera. I'll link that below as well. Okay, so what are the pros and cons of using a ONE X2? Export as vertical or horizontal. So the ONE X2 is made by the same company as the GO 2, which is the tiny camera I just talked about. And because of that, they have the same capability of shooting everything, and then you can choose whether you export it as horizontal or vertical video. Absolutely love this feature. It makes it so easy if you're shooting for both YouTube and TikTok or Instagram, because you have the choice of exporting in both formats. Invisible Selfie Stick. Now, one big advantage of shooting on the ONE X2 versus the GO 2 is that of course you can mount both of them on a selfie stick, but with the ONE X2, the editing software will actually render the selfie stick completely invisible. Now, this is a feature that I believe the GoPro can do as well, but it's really cool with the ONE X2 because essentially it allows for you to get these like drone-like shots without actually owning a drone. Flow state stabilization. So again, being an action camera, the ONE X2 has amazing stabilization. The sort of standard stabilization mode it has is already really good, but in addition to that, they also have this flow state stabilization, which is even stronger. Horizon leveling. So again, because the ONE X2 is made by the same company as the GO 2, it also has that same horizon leveling feature. So no matter which way, which direction you're turning the camera in, the horizon is going to stay level and the shot is going to stay exactly like this. Tons of accessories. So even though as a company, Insta360 hasn't been around as long as GoPro, for example, there are still tons of accessories you can get to use with your ONE X2. One thing that I'm really excited to try is taking the ONE X2 on our next ski trip, because I saw a couple of accessories that make it really, really cool, and you're gonna be able to get some really cool shots where it looks as if someone is following you with a camera down the slope. So fingers crossed that I'll be able to get some of these accessories in time before our next ski trip so that I can kind of test them out and, you know, report back on how well they worked. Okay, so what are the cons of using the ONE X2? You know, I kind of racked my brain about this, and the only con that I can really think of is that the lens of the ONE X2 is very, very fragile. Like if you just put it down on a hard surface, it's very easy for that lens to get scratched. And then once it's scratched, obviously that scratch is going to be visible in all the footage. So one thing that I do is I make sure that if I'm going to be putting this down somewhere, I always rest it on this fabric case that it comes with. I will never put it directly on the table. It's going to be right there on the case. And then another thing you can get in the habit of doing is just actually keeping this directly over the lens at all times. So even if you're like looking at the display or you're changing out the battery, just keeping the top part protected, because that's where the lens is, that's gonna help a lot. Okay, if you'd like to learn how we get paid to travel and how you can too, just click that video right there. If you haven't already, please subscribe and turn on notifications. Go follow us on Instagram and TikTok. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.